And so what I do is I start a book. Once I'm like, okay, I'm pretty positive I'm going to finish this, I reach out to my editor and I'm like, hey, I need edit for this length of book at this time. Because if I don't give myself a deadline like that, I ain't finishing a book. Like, that is how I finish my books, is I'm like, oh crap, I have a deadline. Someone's expecting this. I need to hurdle myself towards the finish line, else I'm going to fail and be awful and be terrible. And panic is a great motivator for me.
Welcome to the Author Like a Boss podcast, the podcast for indie authors who want to improve their writing, up-level their marketing, make money with their books, and have fun doing it. Now, onto the show with your host, Ella Barnard.
Hey boss, if you are starting on your author journey but are nervous about marketing, then I've got something special for you. I've just released a book called Start Marketing Your Book. In it, I share fundamental marketing principles and simple, actionable steps that you can take right now. For less than a cup of coffee, you could actually have everything you need to start selling more books. To buy the book, go to authorlikeaboss.com/start marketing. Hello, author bosses. Welcome to Author Like a Boss. We are here today with Marie Robinson. She always wanted to be an author when she grew up, and she took a really long route to get there. Route, depends on how you say it. She went from retail to corporate to baking and pastry chef to briefly a literary agent and finally to an editor and author. Along the way, she picked up a couple different college degrees, a husband, 2 dogs, and last year, a son. Oh my gosh. I'm like in baby mode right now, so sorry you said that. And I'm like, baby.
No, it's fine. Well, just to let you know, last night I had a late night because I work at night, but then he decided to be up from 2 a.m. to about 3:30. So I'm really hitting the coffee hard this morning. Okay. So maybe that'll calm your baby fever.
It doesn't. I'm still jealous. But we'll keep that in mind as you guys, as she's answering these questions, that she's a real person getting real things, getting real author stuff done in between like life. Okay.
In between a baby with 4 teeth coming in at one time.
Ooh. What? Okay. Well, go ahead. We'll get into all the nitty gritty fun stuff around how you make time for that. But let's first start with, can you tell us a little more about yourself and your author journey?
Yeah. So I have always wanted to be a writer. So doctors and I guess like experts say that kids go through certain stages of like their creativity where they go from like drawing to writing and so on, and they end up getting better and better. Well, I just skipped the art phase. Like, I'm so bad even still now at just like stick figures because all I wanted to do was write. Like, I remember being in kindergarten or first grade, I think, and I had my spiral notebook and I was rewriting The 3 Little Pigs. And basically I was writing fan fiction in second grade and of 3 Little Pigs of all things. And the Christmas nativity story too. That was pretty funny. I remember purposely trying to write that for my friend. I was literally copying it out of the book. Anyways. Yeah. And then, so I just kept writing throughout like my childhood. And finally in high school, I realized that I was still just writing really bad fan fiction of Mercedes Lackey, who is my absolute favorite fantasy author. She was really popular in the 90s, and if anyone out here likes fantasy and hasn't read her, I highly suggest it.
Her covers were so pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kate Elliott, I think, is who the cover artist was, because I was like, they are so pretty, I'm going to look up who did them.
Mm-hmm. So pretty. And her books are fat, though. Really fat.
Yeah. But oh man, I read The Arrows of the Queen and Arrow's Fall, like the first, or no, that's the second one. Arrow's Flight is the second one. I read those 2 in one night And then I was living in Texas in a really small podunk town, and the closest used bookstore was 3 hours away. And I was like, how long do I have to wait to get the third one? Because it was before like Amazon was huge.
There was no internet back then
online
for just ordering books online. I know.
I was like, I have to drive 3 hours to get this book.
Yeah. And I'm going to as soon as I can get it on my schedule.
Basically. And I read it on the entire journey home. It was great. But so anyways, fast forward through high school, first loves, and I went to college for design management because I'm really creative. And that's basically heading a team of advertisers. And then I bailed out of that, had a rebound boyfriend who I say the boyfriend who shall not be named, had a quarter life crisis like you do as a millennial. And then met my current partner, went to another college, got another degree in pastry chef or being a pastry chef, ended up being a baker, discovered a writing podcast, which is Writing Excuses, which we can plug later. Mm-hmm. And then I heard an interview with Tom Daughtry, the publisher of Tor, which is my dream publisher. And then I got married. Then I went to college again, learning that college is my safety net, apparently. I don't know what it's like to not be a student. And then changed my major 3 times, ended up having a baby, and now I'm actually living my dream as a writer. And the way I did that basically was I went to college and got my bachelor's of science in arts and letters, and everybody is like, what the hell is that? And basically it's a really fancy way of saying general liberal arts degree, but where I took math instead of like a language. Mm-hmm. And because I had 1 math credit away from that degree versus like another 3 terms of Spanish, which I am so bad at Spanish. It's not fun. I've tried taking it like 6 times now, like all through like high school and different colleges. I just can't do it. Mm-hmm. But basically what this degree let me do was I went to Portland State University, where they have the Masters in Book Publishing called Ooligan Press. And it's a student-run and award-winning nonprofit actual press where we take in, or authors will query us and submit their manuscripts to us, and we go through the entire publishing process. And taking the general degree I did, I was able to actually take that program as an undergrad. So I really started getting into the publishing side, not from the self-publishing side, but from the traditional side, because through this program, I was able to get into internship with a local imprint of a Big 5 publisher. I was able to intern and accept a literary agent position with a very successful agency out here on the West Coast, until I realized it's really not for me. And then I also worked with several local literary magazines, and I was like, yes, maybe I won't ever achieve my dream of actually like writing myself, but I can be a part of the process. And because at that point I was just like, maybe I'm not like meant to be a writer. I'm like, I want to help people, because I never thought I would actually enjoy editing. I always wanted to avoid editing. And now I'm like, hey, I make my living with editing. This is weird. I'd never expected this 5 years ago. But anyways, about a year into my education, so about like 2.5 years ago now, Kit, or KT Strange, who writes the Rogue Witch series, the Reverse Harem series, she and I became friends. And she really, really needed a book edited at last minute because she found out the ARC still had a lot of issues. I was like, hey, just send it to me. And that was basically the beginning of our editing relationship, which has turned into one of my favorite, most important friendships, like in general. And it was through her cheerleading, because she is an amazing cheerleader. Like, if you ever need like to be picked up or anything, just go to Kit and she'll be like, you are amazing. Rainbows and sunshine just like permeate from you, and it makes you feel a lot better. Mm-hmm. Anyways, from her cheerleading, I sucked it up and wrote my first historical romance, and it did well enough that I turned out another one while I was on maternity leave, and then another, and then another, and then finally I told my day job that I wasn't coming back because between the little bit of success I had with those historical romances and my editing clients, I was basically able to bring in the same amount as I did with my day job. and then also not have to pay for daycare, which is really expensive.
Yes.
No, like it's like $20 an hour, and I was like, I wasn't making that hourly at my day job for a university. What?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and then so with her support, she's finally like, Brie, you have the story. You are a good writer. You need to just suck it up and finish it. And I was like, okay. And so that's what I'm doing.
Just tell me what to do and I will.
Basically, like everything, I'm like, hey, is this what I should do for social media campaigns? Like, I got the story down. Like, the writing part is fine. It's just like, okay, what do I do outside of it?
Mm-hmm. She's brilliant with that. And you guys, we interviewed her. She was a few episodes back. I think episode brain fart, but it's either 18, 19, or 20 or somewhere right around there. Anyways.
Yeah, I listened to it and I slapped my hand over my mouth laughing when she was like, yeah, my editor was like, Kit, you really suck at subplots. I was like, oh my God, you actually said that. Because I did say that.
Yeah, and then after she said that, I was like, okay, I'm thinking through the books because I've just read them a couple of times, and I'm like, okay, I think I know where she added a subplot in, but I'm not going to say it on here. I'm just going to, I'm be like, I think that's the subplot.
Yeah, no, she's gotten so much better at it. Like the first book that I edited for her, it was just basically the basic plot. There were no subplots, which, you know, is totally fine, especially in a fantasy romance, which she was writing, and it was really good. So what it is if you don't have a subplot, it just feels like the pace goes really fast, and you need subplots to really like thicken the book up and really round out the reader's experience. So Kit's really been working on that. Like, she took, I think, a month to plot the first book of Phoenix Cry before she ever started writing it, because she wanted to make sure she hit those plot points and added in subplots.
Okay, so I really want to dive in and not have first, you guys, we both really like Kit, but we're going to try not to make this whole interview about Kit.
Yeah. Sorry, Kit. We're going to stop talking about you now.
But I do want to ask a little bit, because I've never heard anybody talk about subplots the way that you are. So can you talk a little bit about subplots and how you put them, how you would use them?
Yeah, so subplots are, quick definition, basically plots that happen within the book that aren't the main point of the book, basically. But the big part about subplots that I see a lot of people missing is, well, other than they don't add them, is that they don't realize that they need to be resolved within that first book. Like, if you have a series, that's fine, and to have plots that go arc through them, but to really have a full reader experience that you're like, wow, this is really satisfying, you need to have a subplot that will be resolved from, like, in the actual book itself. Like, by the end of that book, that plot has been resolved. And sometimes you can even have subplots that only last like a chapter, which happened to me last night. I was like, ooh, a subplot just hit me, but it will only take this whole chapter to create this tension, create this question, make my character have to struggle with something and then figure it out and then resolve it. And so with a book that's about, I'm not going to use word counts because a lot of people are like, wait, what? When it comes to length. So for a book that's about 220 pages, you probably want 2 subplots in there to really thicken it up. And what I mean by thicken it up, not only does it make your book longer, it does, but it rounds out your characters. Subplots are a really great area to show character growth, to show these characters who are supposed to be like fleshed out people that your readers can connect with. And the way that they can do that with subplots is you take them away from the main plot and you give them new motivations. You're like, oh, this guy who's really all about being an alpha, like he's going to take charge and lead the army away. He's suddenly put in a position where he has to make a choice between like leaving a kid behind or taking the kid with him, even though he's really bad at kids. And this is how you learn that he's really bad with kids. And then you can also add in history, like, why is he bad with kids? Did he have a bad experience? Did he maybe lose his wife and young child like early on into their relationship? Or really, it just gives you a lot of wiggle room in a very tiny space of words to add to that book. And I felt like that was a really rambly answer, and I don't know if I really.
Let me see if I understand. So,
Yeah.
because the way my new understanding now of subplots that I did not have before, so this is actually really, really good. Because a lot of people, and you probably have seen this before, a lot of people have a lot of backstory in their books.
Yeah.
When they first start, right? When they first start writing, and it seems to me like a subplot could be a really, really excellent way of sharing some of the roundness of the, of the character without going into having to be like, well, this is why. You actually just put a little chapter subplot in there where they like the example you gave, and you're like, oh, and the reason why he's not good with kids is because yada yada, but you don't have to actually just sit there and write the backstory.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And another great thing, which I can't think of his name. Sam Sykes, I think is how you say it. He's a traditionally pubbed author. He usually on Twitter, he usually posts like hilarious jokes. And so I was not expecting actually good advice coming from this one tweet of his. But he said something that I really love, and I've been telling all of my clients, is that the best way to show your character or show character development and round a character out is have them talk to another character, but not about the plot. Like, don't have your characters interacting only to advance the plot. You want to have them talk about, oh, what do they like? What are their quirks? Like, yeah, we need to fall in love if you're writing a romance, or you have to make it across space if you're writing a sci-fi. But when you're making it across space, there's all that journey time that you can share inside jokes, and you can show your characters have preference and such, and you can build subplots off of that, and you can build your characters off of your subplots, and it really just gives you such a better book.
I'm in the middle of writing my own book now, and one of the things I love, probably inspired by Kit and just various reverse harem authors, is because you have all these guys in the books, there's usually, my favorite ones have this enjoyable banter.
Yeah.
Because they take the time, like they take the time. They're like, well, they're all in a tiny little van together driving up the West Coast. So of course there's going to be some kind of banter back and forth.
Yeah. See, mine is, they're stuck in a tower. Well, they're not stuck, but they live in a tower.
Yeah.
Because it's fantasy.
So. Right. Fantasy. Yes. yes. And so how do you, this is my question though. So how do you create interesting and realistic, or not realistic because they're fantasy, but you know what, but real to
dragons
the person.
Are real. What are you
real
talking?
To the person reading it. I also believe dragons are real. Like it's one of my, I'm like, nobody can prove they aren't real. So
I mean, we have giraffes, which are like weird, long-necked cheetah things. Real. So
they're real.
I would not be surprised if dragons were real.
Plus, they're magic, so they can be invisible. Duh. Okay.
Yeah. So how do I create fleshed out cool characters
and banter, and that conversation, that dialogue, I guess. Yeah.
So Asina was actually writing the other night or last night. So I have Tristan, who is he's the funny one, basically. But he's still awesome. I kind of based him off of the main character in Gallivant because I love that show. And if you like musicals that make fun of itself, I highly suggest it. But, and then I also have Caliban, who is the broken character. He's the one that was first cursed into a dragon. Slight spoiler, not really. My book, everybody knows that they're dragons. but that they're cursed. And he loses most of his humanity in that curse because he was the first one. The evil queen was experimenting on him. But he still has his humanity, and their interactions, in my opinion, really funny because he's like, person's like, oh, I'm gonna beat you tomorrow at wrestling, and Caliban's like, that will be the first time in 200 years, and Tristan's like, well, I have a reason now too, since we have the audience of the love interest. And you just, what you want to do with characters. Wow, that sounded really lame, but I swear it's funnier, or at least I hope it's funnier.
But how do you get there? What are
How
you doing?
you get there is you don't want cookie cutter characters. Like I have Caliban, who is broken, who acts on instinct more than logic. And I have Tristan, who acts more on what makes him happy because he wants to be happy. He wants to laugh. And so if he has the option to go the funnier route, he's going to do that because that's who he is. And then I have Septimus, who is the intelligent, very cocky bookworm, basically. Like, he is not a warrior. He deals with magic. He deals with intellect. And then I have Gawain, who is the leader of them all, who also feels just resounding guilt because of his role in their curse, basically. And so he's seeking redemption. Septimus is just doing his thing where he's like, I actually don't care. I have a really long life now. I can do all the research I want, and I'm going to be snarky. And so when you put these people together, you have the snarky guy who goes against the leader who wants to be right all the time. And that instantly creates conflict, which helps you make that banter. Or you have the funny guy and the guy who only really operates off of instinct, who doesn't get the jokes all the time, or he gets angry that someone's trying to make so light of a situation. And you get banter through conflict, and you get conflict by having unique characters. And that's going to be your best way to do it. And I build my characters outside of my manuscript first. Like, I have character profile documents, and because what you do, that way you don't have to info dump in the manuscript itself. You can just be like, oh, this is what starts this for Tristan, or this is a main characteristic of Septimus. And then having that on the side, I'm able to then influence his decisions in the manuscript itself, which lets the reader know what he's like without literally just telling him or telling the readers what he's like.
Yes.
And that's how you get banter. And it's how you get good character interaction, is you just put their conflicts against each other. I
think that's okay. I really like that. And and it's making me think about, I don't know, you guys, if we're having so many Star Trek references in here, and I swear I wasn't a Trekkie, but
Star Trek is the best.
But so many people that I've like, you guys, when I was in my 20s, I was like, I never knew, but I moved to the Silicon Valley. I didn't know, I never watched Star Trek. I didn't grow up watching it, but everybody in the Silicon Valley is into computer science and programming and Trekkies. And so there were all these references being made all the time. And so I was like, I need to
catch up on this just to like, and this is culture shock. Yes. I need to blend in with culture.
Yeah. And so a group of friends that they were like, well, they were happy to watch them over again with me. So they got together and they like went through all of TNG and picked out the best episodes, because it would have taken like years. Yeah. And every Monday we did a potluck and watched 1 or 2 episodes.
That's amazing. I love that.
I caught up. And now my husband is a Trekkie, and it's our go-to Netflix show. And so anyways, coming back around, right now we're in the middle of Voyager.
I love Voyager. It's my favorite. I will die on this hill. I love Voyager so much more than the rest of them.
Yeah.
But Janeway is just awesome.
Janeway is awesome. But they're really, really, really good example of what you're talking about is Neelix and Tuvok.
Yes. Perfect example.
Neelix, you guys, sorry. Neelix is like this kind of bumbling, funny, like doesn't take anything
Oh my
really
God,
seriously.
I love him so much.
And then Tuvok is a Vulcan, so he has no emotion, totally serious. And the series, the producers, they play on that. They actually put them together in these situations.
Yeah,
they have
make them
whole
work together
episodes,
so often.
whole episodes that are just devoted to Neelix and Tuvok because it's funny.
Yeah, and
Anyways.
that's how they get that banter. Is they put two so different personalities and characters up against each other, and they're both reacting the way that their character would. Like, it's very realistic for their characters how they're responding in these situations that they put them in, and that's what gets that banter, because you have Tuvok who's being super serious, and he's like, no, we have to like find shelter, we can't take this youngling with us. I think that was that episode.
Or there's one where they have Neelix having to room with Tuvok, which is hilarious. And I'll try to look it up so that you guys can see if you want an example of what we're talking about. Okay.
It's also hilarious when their bodies got merged and like they were being both of them.
They were like, what? I know, it's so much. And they do that on purpose because... So I think what I'm going to do for me, and tell me if this, because you guys, I'm like greedily and selfishly like hoping that this also helps you. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what you've done, is make these character things and then just put them in a situation and free write it until I feel like I know them well enough that the banter and dialogue comes more naturally. What do you think?
I highly agree with that. I do that quite frequently. I know a lot of really big authors do that as well. Like, I know that's how Brandon Sanderson, I believe, starts learning his characters, is he basically just starts free writing them to be like, oh, who are you? And I'm going to put you in situations and stuff. So,
okay. Awesome.
Yeah, it's good.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. I had wanted to ask you, so you are very, let's see, what is your revision process?
So it used to be, I very rarely revised. I would send my book to an editor, they would clean it up and be like, cool, I trust you. And then, because I wasn't really owning those books, not in the sense of like, oh, I'm not proud of them. It was just more like, okay, this is a means to an end. But now with Stone and Fire especially, I'm working with betas, and which is a first for me. And they're already pointing out things that I'm just like, oh, okay, I need to go back and flesh this out more. And so I'm not bragging when I say this, but because I've worked so much with other books and other authors, I typically write a really clean first draft, just from my experience and my training with writing, basically as a tool. And so when I end up having to go back and revise, it's not so much I'm just getting things wrong. It's that I'm realizing I'm writing too lean. And by writing lean, I mean I'm not putting enough, not fluff, because you don't want fluff, but like the emotional impact, the feelings, or I'm going a bit too lean on the description of the area. So one of my beta readers was like, I'm kind of getting differentiating ideas of what the actual setting looks like. Is it really like, are the hallways really large for the dragons, or are they small? And so I have to go back in there and flesh the scene out a little bit more when it comes to descriptives, because I was trained to be like, cut everything out, like take away all the fluff that you can. And so I'm having to retrain myself to be like, no, that's not fluff, that's actually necessary. And so working with betas have really helped me, and it's really changed my revision process now, which is still giving it to an editor, but now putting it in front of people who are basically amazing and love the genre that I'm writing in. And they tell me, hey, actually, she seems like she would challenge this other character way more than she is. And I was like, you know what? You are right. So I'm going to make sure I address that, because that is a character failing. That was my fault, because if that character is that strong, she would go toe to toe with this other character, and I just kind of had her not.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, I have a couple questions, but I have a quick
Yeah.
comment. That's one of my pet peeves, is when all of a sudden a character who's supposed to be badass goes dumb or subdued or something, and I'm like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Anyways, okay. So thank you to the beta reader.
Yes. Yes, thank you.
A couple of questions. So the typical process that I know a lot of authors use for the beta readers is they write their stories. They revise it themselves a time, go through it once or twice themselves. Maybe go to an editor, come back, and then use betas. But it sounds like you're using them differently. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the way I use them is, funny enough, on Kit's advice. Yeah. So before I get to that, let me this is where my background really makes me struggle. So I come from traditional pub. So usually you finish the manuscript, you then leave it alone for 6 weeks before ever looking at it again. Because if you look at it before 6 weeks, you aren't going to be able to look at it as impartially as you could after 6 weeks, because you know your manuscript. You don't see mistakes because you read it as it should be, not what it actually is. And so then after that, you revise it, you send it to one of your alpha readers, like a friend who's like, yeah, I'll read it for you and point out some things. Then you edit it again. And then you maybe finally get it to an editor who spends 2 to 4 weeks, depending on the editor, developing it. They don't even look at the lines. They're just looking at your story structure, your characters, your arcs, your pacing, your narrative, your language. And then they send that back to you with like a 10-page letter outlining everything. And then you go back and you fix that again. And then you might have to develop it again before it ever goes to another editor, which is a line or a copy editor for line editing, where they don't really care much about the overall arc story, but they're the ones that make sure that if she's wearing a dress on page 12, she's still wearing the dress and not wearing jeans on page like 15.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, you go through and you can fix them. You can disagree or agree with your copy editor's little alterations. And then there's the proofer. And usually the proofer is just going through and being like, oh, hey, you missed a comma. Or they've caught some really great things, luckily, for me at least. And that process takes like 2 years for traditional publishing. It's insane. Self-publishing, you don't have 2 years. Like, no. You don't. Yeah. And
you're like behind the times if you're like
if you're taking 2 years.
Behind the trends, if you're taking 2 years or even a year. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so you have to figure out how to cut that down into the like 6-week process that most authors have. And so what I do is I start a book. Once I'm like, okay, I'm pretty positive I'm going to finish this, I reach out to my editor and I'm like, hey, I need edit for this length of book at this time, because if I don't give myself a deadline like that, I ain't finishing a book. Like, that is how I finish my books, is I'm like, oh crap, I have a deadline, someone's expecting this, I need to hurdle myself towards the finish line, else I'm gonna fail and be awful and be terrible. And panic is a great motivator for me. And then so what I use betas for, off of Kit's advice, is every Friday I now throw them my next 5 chapters. And I'm like, hey, tell me specifically what sucks. And that's what I when I put out my call out for beta readers, I was like, look, I know you're going to like this. And I'm not being cocky. I'm just being like, you guys like reading. You like this genre. You like this story type. So generally, you're going to like it. And that's great. And I love that you tell me that you like it, but I need you to tell me what sucks and what's wrong. If my pacing's slow, like I need you to not be nice. Like I need you to tell me what I need to fix and what you don't like and what you expect the storyline to do, because that lets me make sure I'm writing as strong as I can in the little bit of time that I have compared to what I would have if I wasn't self-publishing. And so that's why I don't wait until I'm done with the manuscript, because that just helps me expedite the process, because my betas are working with me as we're going along, and I'm able to still write the story that I want to write, but I'm making sure that it's as strong as it can be as quickly as I can make it before it ever gets to my editor.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And it's working well?
It's working really well. Yeah.
Okay. How and where did you find these betas?
I put a call out on my Facebook group, which I have a Facebook group, which is amazing because I am very introverted. And I was like, what? I need a Facebook group where strangers come and like expect me to talk to them? And Kit was like, yes, you do. And I was like, oh God, okay. And then so I did that. And it's surprisingly pretty popular, and I haven't even published anything yet. And all I do is share cat memes and food stuff and GIFs and talk about my book, which is kind of awesome that they're already so excited about it. And I finally was like, hey, I need betas. I want 5 betas who can take a week with each 4 or 5 chapters and tell me what's wrong. Like, I need someone I need people who are going to tell me, like I said, what's wrong.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want cheerleading. Like, I've got enough cheerleaders. I need coaches right now. And I had plenty of applications for it. So I was like, cool, this is working. People are actually wanting to do this. So that's how I found them. Facebook group. They're piranhas. It's amazing.
and okay, Facebook group. You can go yeah. So how are people finding your Facebook group? And when did you start it?
I started it, I think, like, I'm looking at my calendar, I think at the beginning of June. Okay. Maybe middle of June.
Okay, so you guys, I'm not sure. As of now, that's like a month ago. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So a month ago.
Yeah, because this won't come out right away, like today or tomorrow. So she's had their group for like 4 weeks.
Yeah, basically. So yeah, it's still quite new at this point in time. So anyways, what I did was there's a huge reverse harem reader and author group on Facebook that has, like, they just hit over 5,000 members, and I think they're almost up to 5,500. And there's one that's specifically also for reverse harem sci-fi and fantasy, which they're over 1,000. And what I did was I just posted. I was like, hey, hi, I'm an author. I'm going to publish a book soon. Come hang out with me. And they were like, yes, we like you. And I was like, oh, they like me. So that's how I found them.
Okay, so I love that so much because I am coaching people all the time on how to interact with potential readers. And the thing is that because we all are ourselves, we're like, well, I'm not that cool. Like,
it turns out some people think we're actually cool, and I'm like, what? But okay.
But you can't find that out until you actually do the posts.
Yeah. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. That gets me to do a lot of things, is I just tell myself, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And if nothing happens, well, I'm not in a worse spot than I was before. So
yeah. The worst that happens is they're like, no, I don't want to. But then some people will. And so and then you just keep doing your life.
A couple people at a time. And then it eventually builds up. And you're like, whoa, I have a fan base. This is awesome.
Yeah, a fan base. Yeah. You are building your fan base and your book isn't out yet.
Yeah. And it's kind of blowing my mind. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. But it's amazing. Okay. So, let's see. So what besides your Facebook group, what are you going to be using for marketing?
Probably not very much else. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I might do some promos. I might hire some people that I know are like above the board, because there's all this drama going on with Amazon right now. People who I know are, above the board, who are wrecked by other authors and kind of basically verified as totally legit. People can follow me on Twitter. I post a lot of random shit, or sorry, crap. And
it's okay.
I'm amazed that I haven't dropped like 5 F-bombs already. I'm not gonna lie. That's gonna be my kid's first word. I know it. But yeah, I post a lot of stuff on Twitter, but I don't usually use it as like a handle for my authorship. The audience is really on Facebook, and so I'm trying to tailor my methods to the audience, which if they're on Facebook, I'm going to be on Facebook. I have a newsletter in case Facebook goes chaotic neutral and starts like charging for Facebook groups or something. And so that way I can be like, I can jump ship. I have a alternate, but otherwise, yeah, I'm basically on Facebook. I just talk to the readers there. There's a huge audience there. People are more than willing to talk to me about how I basically write. So I can go to this one coffee shop down the street because it has chocolate whipped cream. And
what?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's my favorite coffee shop. I get a mocha or 2 every time. And I'm like, I'm just going to be a writer so I can justify coming here and getting chocolate whipped cream.
Amen. Where do you live in Portland?
I do.
Oh my gosh, you guys. I was chatting in a Facebook group the other day and somebody was like, what makes you just want to like go to the top of the mountain and like shout in joy? And I was like, Powell's bookstore.
Yes. So funny. My first college that I went to was actually like kitty corner to Powell's.
Ugh.
So like the main warehouse. I'm actually technically more out on the west side, so I'm right by their Cedar Hills location, it is the largest children's section like of a bookstore in the nation, the Cedar Hills one. So that's really cool. And it is huge. But anyways, so when I was at college, I would just like in between classes, I would have like a 2-hour break. So I just literally pop over to Powell's and grab a book from one of my favorite authors and read up in the silver room where they have that art gallery.
Yeah.
And then I accidentally shoplifted once because I was so used to having a book in my hand because I'm a huge reader. And I was like, oh, I need to go to class. So I just closed the book and walked out, and I made it to the intersection and I was like, oh crap. And I ran back in and I handed cashier that was looking at me like, you are crazy. And I was like, I'm so sorry, this is yours, don't ban me from the store.
Don't ban me from the so you guys, Powell's is like not joking, it's the size of a full city block, but like it's hard to say how many stories because they have like half stories. It's like one but it's massive. And on this group I was like, Powell's, and another guy was like, Powell's is like Mecca. And I was like, it is. Every author and reader should pilgrimage
to Powell's.
And then worship.
Yeah. And like, as much as I make most of my money off of Amazon, because Amazon dominates the self-publishing and ebook market, shop local. Like, if you can shop at a local independent bookstore, do that if you can. And Powell's is great because they ship internationally, so you can support a local non-Amazon company.
Yeah. Yes.
And get really cheap books. So
I love Powell's. Anyways, okay. Okay, we got distracted. Tangent, although I really do think everybody should go to Powell's. And
yeah, it's also a really good resource, especially for market research. That's what I justify. But it is. Like, if you need to do cover research to look at trends in like YA fantasy, go to Powell's. Go to any bookstore and look at the trends that are going on. How are they doing their fonts? How are they doing their just layout? Or look at the backs and read the blurbs and be like, oh, this is what these books are about. And that lets you start knowing what the trends are, and it helps inspire you to write what you want to, but also on trend. So,
but really,
you're just shopping.
So full of shit now.
But really, I'm just shopping, and I'm like, ooh.
You can find that on Amazon as well, and it'll be more up to date. Since a couple earlier in the interview, she was like 2 full years. So.
Yeah. No, I'll come home from pals with a huge bag, and my husband is like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Market research. I can write it off."
I did that last time my sister lives in Portland. And so every time I visit her, I'm like, I'm going to go away for a half a day. I'll see you later.
Yeah.
And I came home, I think with like Kate Elliott. I went and I just got books that had images from artists, fantasy images. Cause I was like, this is my inspiration. I need these.
Have you heard of Above the Timberline?
No.
It's by Greg. Oh God, what's his last name? Irene Gallo. Is his partner, who I know her via, she's the art director, now co-publisher of Tor. Oh, Greg Manchess. It is a phenomenally illustrated fantasy novel.
Ooh.
Like phenomenally. And it is gorgeous. Like I bought it just for his artwork. Like he's amazing. So yeah, if you want a really pretty book, Above the Timberline.
I love pretty
also,
books.
it's like an alternate universe steampunk fantasy. So like
Fun.
it's cool.
So
yeah.
Okay. So talking about sorry you guys, that's a tangent, but I really do. I'm actually thinking of hosting some kind of writing retreat in the Portland area just so that we can make our pilgrimage to
there we go.
Towels. Okay. Plus the food is amazing in Portland. There's chocolate whipped cream.
Yeah, and food carts. Food carts are amazing here.
Yeah. So
everywhere else, you kind of look at them and you're like, oh, that's kind of sketch. I might get food poisoning.
No, not in Portland. They're amazing. No. Okay. Can you tell us about an obstacle or challenge that you faced and how you worked through it?
So the biggest obstacle I have actually is that I'm a work from home mom. And I think a lot of people will relate to this, that they want to be writers, but they have a day job. And that was me for the longest time. And honestly, the only reason why I was able to finally make the leap to be a full-time writer and editor is because I have a second income through my husband. And we have health insurance through my husband. And so I know a lot of people, and I struggle with finding time and energy to write. Like what I'm spending like 12 hours a day with this adorable but soul-sucking energy bleach who is adorable and I love him. But by the time 6 o'clock rolls around and my husband gets home, the last thing I want to do is go and sit at my computer and work. I do want to go and sit at my computer and troll through like Facebook, but finding the energy, not gonna lie, I'm kind of addicted to Facebook, which helps my marketing.
Yes.
But so the obstacle is just, sitting down and making the words happen, because this is self-publishing. You do have such a tight schedule. Like you can't just take 2 years to write a book. Like I love so many books written by traditionally published authors, and I see them on Twitter and they're like, yeah, I got 500 words done today. And I'm like, that would be great to only have to worry about 500 words. I have 500? To hit 25. Yeah. And I'm like,
what are they doing the rest of the day?
Well, typically working. So to be fair.
Okay.
Because most of them have a day job, because traditional publishing does not pay very well at all. Okay. Like you have to earn out your advance and then you finally get royalties. But if you don't ever earn out your advance, you don't see a penny more than your advance. So it's kind of crap, but which is why self-publishing is taking off. But at the same time, you have to put in so much work. And that's something I really sat down with my husband about for this obstacle. And I was like, look, when I'm on maternity leave, I'm going to take a month to myself because I had 3 months from my job. And after he's a month old, I'm going to be a work from home mom. I'm not a stay at home mom. There's a difference. I'm a work from home mom. And making a schedule for myself and sitting down and actually making myself work, even when I'm exhausted, even when all I want to do is just zone out on Netflix and like be on my phone and veg out on the couch. You got to get up and sit down and make the words happen. And it's really hard because you're spending so much time and you don't get any return until up to 60 days later. Like royalties don't pay out for 60 days. And that's assuming you're going to do anything with this book and it's not just a colossal flop. And so it's a risk, but it's a risk that's worth it to me. And so that's my biggest obstacle is being like, okay, I know I'm not going to get an immediate return. I'm not getting a paycheck next week from this, but I still need to treat this like my job because it's what I want my job to be. And so that means I work from 8 p.m. to like 2 a.m. and I'm exhausted all the time. But that's what coffee's for. And I live in Portland, so we have good coffee.
You do have good coffee.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's very inspiring, actually. Oh, shoot. I'm getting emotional.
Is it inspiring? Because it's exhausting.
I know.
It sucks. I'm not going to lie. Like, if people are out there and they haven't written their first book yet and they really want to do it, it's freaking hard work.
Yeah, because you're right. And I really appreciate that you acknowledge that. Acknowledge the... because you spend a lot of time writing and the reward is 60 days at least, but that's from when you release it. That's not from when you start writing it. So
no, I've been writing this book since May, and I'm like, I've been working since May, and it's not going to come out until August 27th, 24th, 24th. I know my own pub date. And it's just like, and then it might flop. I really hope it doesn't flop. I think it's a good book. Other people are telling me they think it's a good book, but that doesn't mean people are going to read it or find it unless I put in even more work. So, you're doing a lot of hustle and a lot of work for very little return until like 60 to a long time down the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Eventually, but afterwards, and this is a part that I don't know that people get to who are starting appreciate as well is after you've done it a couple of times, once it's done, it's still there and people are buying it and you aren't working on it anymore.
Yeah. So that's really great. I have a book, a Jane Austen fan fiction that I wrote and published at the very end of January of this year. And it's still selling. Like, it's my bestseller so far. It's not selling amazing. Like, it's not selling hotcakes. Like, I can't just like retire off of it.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's still selling, that's recessive income from here on out for no effort.
For no effort.
Yeah.
So it's there's pros and cons.
Yes, very much pros and cons. Like, my biggest advice for people out there is don't quit your day job. Like, don't. Like, the reason why I could is because I had a second income that would be able to cover all of our bills. We had health insurance. We did not want to pay out the butt for childcare. And I had a way to at least bring in some money through my editing. So I had the chance and the ability to take a risk and try to make it writing. And I've really lucked out that I've been able to over the last year. But you have to make sure you're financially stable because you don't want to be in a panic all the time when you're trying to be creative and writing a book that might not work out for you. Like, you've got to really assess your situation. And that might mean waking up 2 hours before you normally have to for work to bust out 1,000 words or so. And if you bust out 1,000 words, or I think NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, they do 1,667 words a day will get you a 50,000 word book in a month in 30 days. If you do that, if you can train yourself to do that in an hour, which is very, very possible to train yourself to do that in an hour, you can have a book written every single month while you have a day job. That's 1 hour a day that you have to take. And maybe that means giving up one more episode of Altered Carbon on Netflix, which was an amazing show. Or maybe you don't watch Nailed It and instead you work. And you will get to that spot, but don't quit your day job until you are financially secure enough to make a risk like that, because it might not work out. And that's the scary part, is you might crash and burn. And I'm like terrified of crashing and burning. But
you might crash and burn on your first book, but I've talked to a number of, and even your second, third, but Jonathan Yanez, I think he was one of the earlier. If you haven't listened to that episode, please, everybody do. Because he's like, I wrote 15 books, and it wasn't until my 16th book that I really...
Yeah, and until you really figure out, like...
Yeah.
And Fire is technically going to be my 6th book.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, like,
Yeah.
I figured out my own patterns, like at the 50% marker and the 85% marker. I've convinced myself that my writing is terrible and I should just give up and quit, because that's just, I call it the carousel of self-doubt that you always take a couple spins on while writing a book. But the best way to get through it is just to remember, this is what I want to do as a job. So I'm going to sit down and I'm going to make myself write for 15 minutes. And then I take a break. And then I write for another 15 minutes. And that's how you get through it. And that's how you get through the fear of crashing and burning, is you just put your books out there. Because another great advice that I heard somewhere is, and I think it was from Howard Taylor on writing excuses, they're going to buy your book. And even if it's crap and they don't like it, well, you still got their money. So you still got paid for it. And that's what I have to tell myself. It's like, yes, what I'm writing might be crap, but I'm going to give myself permission to write crap and have my editor and my betas help me figure out how to make it cleaner when I go back to it.
That's really important.
Yeah. Give yourself permission to suck. Because there's going to be times that you just have to write sucky
and
just
then,
to move forward.
Yeah. And then give yourself permission to get help, which is
exactly
hard for a lot of people. So, okay. So you've been teasing us a little bit about your book. So can you tell us a little bit more about it and where people can find you?
Yeah. So my book is Stone and Fire. It is the first in my Magical Kingdom series that I have planned out. This series will be a total of 4 books. It is a reverse harem fantasy, because I love epic fantasy and I really like the concept of reverse harem, which, if you're unfamiliar with the genre, I'm assuming most of your audience isn't unfamiliar, but it's where there's one female character and 3 or more male love interests, where at the end she doesn't actually have to choose one of them. They all end up happily together. And so I'm writing Stone and Fire, epic fantasy, reverse harem. It is my twist. Well, I got the idea. I was like, what if a princess got taken away to a tower guarded by dragons and fell in love with the dragons instead? And so it turns out these guys are, And so it turns out these guys are actually cursed into dragon form, kind of like the Swan Princess was, where every full moon she turned back into a human. Every full moon these dragons turn back into men. And it just sent me careening down a magical world building journey, and I was like, oh, this plot's amazing. And so I'm really bad at shopping my own novels out. This is why I had to stop being a lit agent. I'm just like, I could babble on and on. But basically what happens is she realizes, or she learns, she's always known that she's cursed and she can't use her magic. And her kingdom has had no magic for 400 years. And so it's really a secret. It's a state secret that she has magic, even though she can't use it. And on the evening before her presentation ball, the castle gets attacked. She gets attacked, and the dragons rescue her through her godmother. And she's having to learn. It's basically, she's going through and having to solve the mystery of her curse that happened 21 years ago, because that holds the key to the greater question of who the hell is coming after my kingdom? Why am I not safe? And through doing so, she's learning these dragons are actually men, and that they are somehow connected to her curse. And she's falling in love with these men that she's like, I can't fall in love with 5 guys. Like, I can't come home married to dragons. This is going to be impossible, right?
Okay. That's enough for people to go want more.
Yeah. But basically, politics, mysteries with a lot of kissing.
And a little bit of, I love how you've like taken a number of fairy tales. You're like, there's a tower, there's a curse, it's like, and
oh yeah, I basically went into Disney's pantry of like fairy tales, shook the rack, and like started just pulling random stuff off of it, and was like, I'm putting it together. This is amazing. Oh my god, I'm so smart. And I just can't explain it.
And then I also love, and I thought about this earlier, like way a while back, and I wanted to comment on it. And I was like, the names of her dragon characters are the most fantasy named characters ever of all time. Like Septimus.
Yeah, Septimus, Caliban, Wayne, Tristan. I may or may not have started stealing from Shakespeare and Arthurian legends.
I know. I know you. I'm surprised one of them isn't named like Lancelot or.
That was a bit too on the nose. A bit too on the nose. I was like, better not. And I can't get away with like Lancy.
There's not really a good way to change Lancelot into anything but what it is.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I didn't realize, because I've been like around, kind of hanging around, because I'm in Kit's group as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna join your group. I love Dragon Shifters and I love Reaver's Harem. So I'm like, I'm gonna go join that group and get this book now.
Yay!
Yeah, I'm really excited. Really excited. Okay.
Yeah, and if you join my group too, I wrote a 60-page short story that's kind of a twist on Robin Hood and his merry men.
I read it already.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyone who's in my group gets that short story for free.
Ooh. So. Okay.
Yeah.
Only join the group if you like reverse harem with lots of sex, and dragons and fantasy.
There's lots of kissing.
But where is that the best place for people to find you? Actually,
it really is. If you want to hang out with me, otherwise you can just like follow me on Amazon, because I'm basically only on Facebook constantly.
Okay, and what's the name of your Facebook group?
Tower Sirens. Okay. Sirens like mythological sirens. And then I realized also I'm loud, so Tower Sirens work.
Awesome. Okay. Super. Thank you so much for being here and talking about editing and all the fun things that we've talked about today. Star Trek, dragons. It has been fun times.
Subplots, plots, characters, conflict.
Yes.
All the good stuff.
All the good stuff. And thank you everybody for listening. This is Ella here at Author Like a Boss. Hey boss, you made it to the end of the episode. You're the best. Because of that, I'm going to give you a special invitation to find out more about the Author Boss Academy, where I and a bunch of really awesome authors hang out, have fun, and get stuff done. If you end up joining, tell me the secret word and you'll get a special bonus. Find out more about the Academy at authorlikeaboss.com/academy. The secret word is nipples. Hugs and happy authoring. I hope to see you soon.
If you love the Author Like a Boss podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes. Until next time.